Hey, boys and girls, it's Miss Escamilla. Tonight for homework, we're going to introduce decimals. Decimals are new to fourth grade, although they're not exactly brand new because you guys have been dealing with money for quite some time now. In fourth grade, we start looking at numbers that look like money because they have a decimal point, but we start learning about the new place value positions. So far up until now, you guys have learned about whole numbers, our ones place, all the way to our billions place. But today we're going to start looking at place value positions to the right of our decimal point. And so they're brand new to us as fourth graders. So we're going to investigate. So looking at your packet, we're looking at module 2.1, model tenths and hundredths. And it says here that a decimal is a number with one or more digits to the right of the decimal point, such as tenths and hundredths. If one is divided into 10 equal parts, each part is a tenth. And if one is divided into 100 equal parts, each part is 100th. So if you're looking at a place value chart in our past, we've learned that if I have the number 145, that the 5 is in our ones place, the 4 is in our tens place, and the 1 is in the hundredths place. These are all place value positions to the left. Here's our decimal point, to the left of our decimal point. These are our whole numbers. Today we're going to start talking about place value positions to the right of our decimal point. This new place value position is called the tenths. And this new place value position to the right of our decimal point is called the hundredths. Hundredths, okay? And so what this is telling us right here is that the tenths place is if you were to take one of the ones and divide it into 10 equal parts. And the hundredths place is if you were to take one of the ones place and divide it into 100 equal parts, that would give you hundredths. So you guys have been looking at place value blocks or base 10 blocks since you were probably in kindergarten or first grade. And up until this point in time, you guys have all learned that a small cube represents one unit or one whole. Sometimes I like to also refer to it as one whole unit or 1 unit. And you guys have learned that it takes 10 of these to make a long. And so that this long has a value of 10 ones or 10 of these ones. And that this entire long is worth 1/10. You guys have also up until this point learned that in this flat, it represents 100 of these units or 100 ones, and that it takes 10 of these longs to make this flat. So that would mean that it would take 10 of these tens to make this flat, and that it takes, so that this entire flat equals 100. So that's what we've known up until now because we've only been learning about whole numbers up until this point. But now we're going to start looking at numbers that are parts of a whole or smaller than whole numbers. Okay, so we're going to we don't want to forget what we've learned about our base 10 blocks and whole numbers, but we kind of want to realign our thinking about our base 10 blocks and what they represent as we go through our decimal unit, because in our decimal unit, these place value blocks or base 10 blocks represent something different. So whereas in the past, a flat represented 100 and a long represented 10 and a small cube represented 1, it's different when we start talking about decimals. So for now, what we're going to start looking at is we're going to say that this flat now, rather than representing 100 small cubes, we're going to go ahead and say that this flat represents one whole. So one whole of anything. It could be a whole pizza. Okay. It could be a whole cake. It could be a whole pie. It could be one whole of anything, but one entire whole unit of something. And so if this represents 1 whole, then it would still take, this long right here is going to represent 1 out of the 10 that it would take to make this 1 whole. So this is considered a long, and you can still see that it takes 10 of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to make this 1 whole. So for that reason, we're going to say that this long is 1 out of the 10, or 1/10 of this 1 whole. Now, because this is 1/10, and we saw earlier that this place value position directly to the right of our decimal point is the 10th place, we are going to also write this as a decimal. So this is 1/10 of the longs that it takes to make an entire flat, or a 1 whole, but we would write it as 0.1. And the way we would say this decimal is 1/10, because this 1 is in the 10th place, which I referred to earlier today. Okay, so we would say that this long is 1/10, okay? And back over here to our whole, well, it takes 10 of these tenths to make 1 whole. So right here in this blank, I'm going to say that it takes 10 tenths to make 1 whole. So we're going to refer to these as our tenths. Okay, now looking at our small cube, whereas a small cube used to be worth 1, now we're going to say that it's worth 1/100th, because it takes, if you look at this small cube, this is 1 out of the 100 small cubes it takes to make this flat, or this 1 whole. So we would say that this small cube is 1/100th, is a 1/100th. It's 1 out of the 100 that it takes to make this entire flat, or this entire whole. Okay, now we also said that our 100ths place is 2 positions, 1, 2, directly to the right of our decimal point, and we call that position the 100ths place. So the way we would write this as a decimal would be to write a 0.0. Notice I put a 0 in the 10ths place because this is only one little bitty tiny cube. We don't have any tenths. And then I would write a 1 in the 100ths place, which I referred to earlier. So this would be 1. We would read this decimal as 1/100th, because I have a 1 in the 100ths place. Okay, so now with that being said, so this represents 1/100th. Now this little guy, though, it takes 10 of these little small cubes to make 1 of these longs. So if you notice in this long, there's 10 of these little guys in this long. Well, now since these are called hundredths, we would say that there are 10 hundredths in this long. And this would be 1 out of the 10 it takes to make this long. So we would say that this is 1/10, 1 out of the 10 that it takes to make this 10th over here, because this is called a 10th now. Or we could write this as 0.1, because this is 1/10, a 1 in the 10th place. So we could also say that this small cube is 1/10 of a 10th, 1 out of the 10 it takes to make this 10th. Okay, and of course this little guy, now we will not call him a 1 anymore. He is called a 100th. This little small cube is now called a 100th. It's 1/100th. Okay, this long is now called a 10th. Okay, now in this, going back to this long, now in this long right here, we know we just said that it takes 10 of these small guys to make this guy. So that's 10 hundredths. And we know in this block, there's 100 of these little guys. So that's 100 hundredths. Okay. So what I need you to remember, boys and girls, for tomorrow is that this is now called 1 whole. This is now called 1/10. And this is now called 1/100th. We're going to talk about this some more tomorrow. Okay. So again, these are our new place value positions, and we'll talk about this tomorrow. Bye.